I have by Martin Luther. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 4 years ago, the great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a glorious slavery to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still anguished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we have come here today to dramatize the exchange process. In a sense, the incarnation capital when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. They were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall here. This note was the promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be granted the inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that Americans defaulted on this promissory note insofar as their citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a badge. A text which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vault of the treasury of this nation. And so we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us on demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. It is no time to engage in luxury of pulling off or take the tantalizing drugs of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now it's time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom for us. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hope that the Negro will lead us in rows off and will now be content will have a rude awakening of the nation, the third distribution club. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwind of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the one threshold to seize into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of non-conformity. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by digging into the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must not allow our faithful process to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of neat physical force with soul. And the marvelous new heights of physical militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our lives. We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. The there are those who are asking the devotees, fellow brides, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horror of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by time taken for white only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No. We are not satisfied. And we will not be satisfied until justice flows down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by storms of persecution and staggered by winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of faith and suffering. Continue to work with a faith that unearned suffering could never last. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, with its vicious races, with its own government split, dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill and mountain shall be praised. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the south with. And with this faith, we will be able to view out of the mountains of despair over hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discord of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to play together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to reign, when we let it reign from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro inspiration. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. We are free at last.